Have you ever wondered why certain desires, emotions, or behaviors seem to control you, even when you don't want them to? What if I told you that the root cause of these unconscious impulses lies in an energy that is often hidden sexual energy? But not just sexual energy in the way you might be thinking. I'm talking about something deeper, something that influences not just your intimate relationships, but your creativity, your purpose, your sense of self. In today's video, we're going to delve into Carl Jung's groundbreaking theory on the psyche and the energy that fuels it, the libido. This powerful force is not just about sex. It's a creative energy that influences every aspect of our lives. What happens when this energy is repressed? How does it affect our relationships, our ability to connect with others, and even our overall well-being? Most importantly, how can we liberate this energy, bring it to light, and integrate it into our lives in a healthy and empowering way? But here's the twist. As we uncover the secrets behind sexual energy and its deep connection to personal growth, we'll also explore how repressed desires can create conflict and dysfunction in our relationships. We'll learn how to confront these suppressed feelings, embrace our sexual energy, and ultimately reclaim our creative power. This is not just about sexual liberation, it's about the journey of self-realization and healing. By the end of this video, you'll have a whole new perspective on how sexual energy operates within you and how you can transform it into a source of empowerment, not just in your intimate life, but in every aspect of your being. So, are you ready to embark on this life-changing journey? Stay with me until the end, and let's begin to unlock the untapped potential hidden within us all. And before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button if you're ready to explore new dimensions of self-discovery. Share this video with anyone who might benefit from it, and subscribe to our channel for more insightful content. Also, if you're enjoying the video and would like to show your support, feel free to drop a super thanks below. Let's get started. In exploring the deep psychological influences of sexual energy, we venture into the fascinating theories proposed by Carl Jung, a renowned Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. Jung's work, particularly his views on libido, the unconscious, and the concept of the shadow, has had a profound impact on how we understand human behavior, desires, and psychological growth. But why does sexual energy, not just the act of sex itself, hold such immense power over the human psyche? What is it about this primal force that governs much of our thinking, our desires, and the choices we make often without us even realizing it? Jung believed that sexual energy is not simply about biological urges or physical acts. Rather, it represents a much deeper psychic force that, when properly understood and integrated, can be a source of creativity, vitality, and personal growth. However, when misunderstood or suppressed, it becomes a shadow force, influencing our behaviors in ways that we might not be consciously aware of. This notion of sexual energy as a powerful, underlying force shaping our lives is at the core of Jung's psychological theory. To understand why sexual energy has such an outsized impact on our behavior and thoughts, we must first consider the nature of the unconscious mind. According to Jung, the unconscious is a repository of all the aspects of ourselves that we reject or repress: our fears, desires, and impulses that do not fit with our conscious self-image. Sexuality, especially when repressed or misunderstood, is a key part of this unconscious content. Instead of simply disappearing or being eliminated from our psyche, these repressed sexual desires hide in the unconscious, shaping our behaviors, emotional responses, and interpersonal dynamics without our conscious awareness. A crucial concept in Jung's theory is the idea of the shadow. The shadow consists of all the parts of ourselves that we reject, repress, or deny, whether out of fear, shame, or societal pressure. These rejected parts do not vanish. They continue to exist, exerting influence over our behavior from behind the scenes. When it comes to sexuality, this means that many of our desires, fantasies, and vulnerabilities often shaped by societal taboos or personal shame remain hidden in the unconscious, continuing to control us from the darkness. One of the key points that Jung makes is that the repression of sexuality does not purify the soul, as some might believe, but rather fragments it. This fragmentation leads to a sense of inner disconnection, what Jung referred to as a split between the conscious self, the persona, and the unconscious forces driving us. It's not just that we feel disconnected from our own sexuality, we also feel disconnected from our authentic selves. This split is evident in the way we often find ourselves at odds with our own desires, feeling shame or guilt about things we are naturally drawn to but have been taught to suppress. The effects of this repression are pervasive. When we fail to integrate our sexual energy consciously, it often manifests in unhealthy ways such as obsessive thoughts, shame, fear, or even compulsive behaviors. In our relationships, this can lead to dysfunction and frustration as we project our repressed desires onto others. Jung argued that when we don't own and understand these aspects of ourselves, we end up projecting them outward, seeing them in others, and often judging them harshly. For example, one might find themselves reacting with anger or judgment towards a person who expresses their sexuality freely, but upon closer examination, we often discover that this judgment is actually a reflection of our own unresolved feelings about our sexual identity. Jung believed that the process of individuation, becoming a fully integrated and authentic person, requires us to confront and integrate these repressed aspects of ourselves, including our sexual energy. Sexuality, in this context, is not something to be denied or suppressed, but something to be embraced and understood. By confronting our shadow, we can reclaim the energy that has been hidden and fragmented within us, allowing us to reconnect with our true selves. When we embrace this energy rather than repressing it, we begin to experience a deeper sense of vitality, creativity, and emotional connection. However, it is not always easy to confront these suppressed parts of ourselves. Society plays a significant role in how we perceive and manage our sexuality. In many cultures, sexual desire is often either overly commodified or excessively repressed. This cultural dichotomy creates a paradox. On one hand, sexual imagery and references are everywhere in media, advertisements, and casual conversations. On the other hand, there is a profound lack of genuine discussions about sexuality, intimacy, and emotional connection. The public discourse around sex often focuses on the external, physical aspects, but rarely addresses the deeper psychological and emotional elements of sexual energy. Jung's insights into the unconscious and the shadow offer a more profound understanding of this paradox. He recognized that the repression of sexual energy does not merely lead to shame or guilt. It also leads to a disconnection from the life force that fuels our creativity, passion, and sense of purpose. Sexual energy, when understood and integrated, becomes a powerful source of vitality, emotional depth, and personal growth. However, when ignored or suppressed, it can manifest in unhealthy ways such as addiction, obsession, or emotional instability. In modern society, many people seek personal growth, spiritual enlightenment, or emotional healing without realizing that they are cut off from the very source of energy that can fuel these processes, sexual energy. Jung argued that the libido is not just about sexual desire. It is the core energy that drives all creative expression, emotional connection, and personal transformation. When we deny this energy, we not only diminish our capacity for creativity and growth, but also create an inner void that leads to feelings of isolation, emptiness, and disconnection. One of the most profound aspects of Jung's work is his understanding of how sexual energy shapes our identity and relationships. He believed that our sexual energy is intricately linked to our sense of self and our capacity to connect with others. When we suppress this energy, We not only disconnect from our own authenticity, but also from the ability to form meaningful, fulfilling relationships. By confronting and integrating our sexual energy, we can begin to experience deeper intimacy and emotional connection, both with ourselves and with others. In examining the power of sexual energy, it becomes clear that this force is not just a physical or biological phenomenon. It is a deeply psychological and spiritual one. Jung's work invites us to explore the unconscious forces that shape our desires, behaviors, and relationships, and to reclaim the power that lies hidden within us. By integrating this energy, we can experience a profound shift in our sense of self, our relationships, and our overall sense of purpose. Through his work, Jung challenged us to rethink our relationship with sexuality, urging us to see it not as something to be feared or suppressed, but as a powerful and transformative force that can fuel our personal and spiritual growth. By embracing and understanding our sexual energy, we unlock the potential for greater creativity, vitality, and emotional depth. The journey toward integrating this energy is not always easy, but it is a journey worth taking, one that leads to a more authentic, whole, and empowered self. Carl Jung's theory of the libido is a profound departure from the ideas put forth by Sigmund Freud. While Freud's model of the libido primarily centers on sexual desire, Jung broadened this concept to encompass the idea that the libido is not just a sexual drive, but a life energy, a psychological force that drives all human creativity, emotion, and action. According to Jung, libido represents the psychic energy that fuels our thoughts, desires, and behaviors. This energy is not confined to the realm of sexual expression alone, but extends to all facets of human experience. From artistic creation to our capacity for love, and even our ambition to achieve personal growth. Jung believed that the libido is a fundamental force within the human psyche, a powerful and dynamic energy that serves as the engine behind much of what we do. Unlike Freud, who saw the libido as essentially tied to sexual repression and the development of neuroses, Jung saw this psychic energy as far more expansive. He argued that it was the force that fuels every human impulse, be it sexual, emotional, creative, or intellectual. This view opens up a broader understanding of human behavior, seeing it not merely as the result of repressed desires, but as a manifestation of an underlying, ever-present energy that drives us toward fulfillment in all aspects of life. The idea that the libido is a creative life force provides an essential key to understanding the complexities of human psychology. Jung's theory suggests that the libido is not just about seeking pleasure or fulfilling sexual needs, but is deeply intertwined with our desire to create, to connect with others, and to seek personal growth. It's the energy that pushes us to build, create, innovate, and establish meaning in our lives. For instance, when an artist paints a masterpiece, when a writer creates a compelling story, or when someone strives to improve their personal life, they're channeling their libido into a creative outlet. These actions are not merely sexual or physical expressions. They are an externalization of an internal, psychological force that seeks to manifest itself in the world. To understand this more clearly, imagine a person who is deeply motivated to create something meaningful, like a novel or a piece of art. The energy they draw upon to pursue this endeavor is not merely an intellectual or mechanical drive. It's rooted in the deeper, unconscious forces of the psyche, specifically the libido. Jung's perspective allows us to see this creative energy as an extension of the same force that drives our sexual instincts. Therefore, the libido is not merely confined to our physical desires, but is fundamentally a life force that shapes every human interaction and pursuit. Jung's concept of libido also provides a lens through which to examine the problems that arise when this energy is either misunderstood or suppressed. Freud's emphasis on sexual repression, particularly as a root cause of neuroses, stands in contrast to Jung's view that when libido is blocked or repressed, it doesn't simply disappear. Instead, it takes on distorted forms, manifesting in unhealthy ways such as obsession, compulsions, and even neuroses. Jung argued that when sexual or creative energy is denied expression, it becomes a force that influences our behavior from the unconscious. For instance, someone who represses their sexual desires might develop symptoms of anxiety, compulsive behavior, or an irrational fear of intimacy. This repression leads to a fragmentation of the self, where the person is unable to reconcile their conscious persona with the unconscious desires and instincts that continue to influence their actions. Jung's argument that suppressed libido can cause negative psychological outcomes reveals the importance of consciously integrating sexual and creative energy. The unconscious does not simply forget what is repressed. Instead, it finds ways to bring these suppressed elements to the surface, often through dreams, projections, or various forms of psychological conflict. Jung's work in dream analysis highlights how sexual symbols in dreams often represent not just a desire for physical connection, but also an internal need for psychological union. The repression of libido can lead to a lack of integration, and this lack of integration creates inner tension and conflict. By addressing and integrating repressed sexual and creative energy, Jung believed individuals could achieve a sense of wholeness, reducing the internal fragmentation that causes mental and emotional distress. For example, in everyday life, we might encounter individuals who appear to be driven by obsessive desires or who seem disconnected from their authentic selves. These individuals may be struggling with unacknowledged or repressed sexual energy that has become distorted into a destructive pattern of behavior. A person who has been taught to suppress or shame their sexual desires might find themselves constantly seeking validation or approval from external sources, whether through attention, accolades, or superficial connections. This external validation becomes a substitute for the internal harmony and self-acceptance that is disrupted by repressed libido. Jung's approach allows us to understand these behaviors not as mere character flaws, but as the result of unresolved psychological forces that need to be addressed. Moreover, Jung proposed that the process of individuation, the journey towards self-realization and wholeness, requires the integration of all aspects of the self, including the libido. This means that acknowledging and accepting sexual desires, fantasies, and creative impulses is not only necessary for emotional health, but is also central to personal development. Rather than seeing sexual energy as something shameful or destructive, Jung urged individuals to recognize it as a powerful force that can be harnessed for personal and creative growth. When we understand the libido as a life force that drives our ambitions, desires, and creative expressions, we can begin to appreciate its role in shaping who we are and what we contribute to the world. Take, for instance, the example of someone who feels constantly unfulfilled in their personal life or career. This person might be living in a state of psychic fragmentation, where they suppress their true desires and passions because they fear judgment or shame. As a result, they feel disconnected from their deeper self, unable to access the creative energy that fuels their motivation and passion. By reconnecting with their sexual and creative energy, by allowing themselves to feel their desires and channel them into constructive outlets, they can begin to heal the rift between their conscious and the unconscious selves. This integration leads to a more authentic existence, where they no longer feel driven by external forces or repressed instincts, but are instead in touch with their true desires and motivations. In contrast to Freud, who viewed libido primarily as the source of sexual tension and conflict, Jung saw it as a far-reaching and transformative force that shapes all aspects of human life. Jung's broader view of libido allows us to see how repressed sexual energy doesn't just affect our intimate relationships, but also influences our work, creativity, and emotional well-being. When the libido is repressed, It doesn't just lead to sexual neuroses, it also stifles creativity, reduces our emotional depth, and prevents us from achieving personal growth. By addressing this blocked energy, Jung believed we could unlock our full potential, both as individuals and as creators. Jung's theory of libido, thus, offers a comprehensive framework for understanding human motivation. It allows us to see that the energy driving our desires is not just about sex, it's about life itself. This energy is what gives us the vitality to connect with others, to create, to pursue our goals, and to engage deeply with the world around us. When we deny this energy, we deny a fundamental part of our human experience, leading to dissatisfaction, confusion, and disconnection. Conversely, when we embrace the libido, we open ourselves up to greater creativity, authenticity, and fulfillment. In practical terms, this means recognizing that our desires, whether sexual, emotional, or creative, are not something to be ashamed of or suppressed. Instead, they are essential aspects of our human nature that need to be integrated into our daily lives. By acknowledging the role of libido in our emotional and psychological processes, we can begin to live more fully, creating lives that are aligned with our deepest desires and passions. Jung's theory reminds us that we are not simply rational beings, but creatures driven by powerful psychological forces that, when understood and harnessed, can lead to profound transformation and self-realization. Carl Jung's concept of shadow is one of the most intriguing and significant ideas in his work. And impulses that we deem undesirable, whether due to societal standards, personal experiences, or cultural conditioning. Jung argued that the shadow is not inherently evil or negative. It is simply the repository of what we fail to acknowledge in ourselves. However, the consequences of denying the shadow can be profound, especially when it comes to repressed desires, particularly sexual ones. When it comes to the repression of sexuality, Jung suggested that the energy tied to sexual desire doesn't simply vanish, it goes underground, into the unconscious, and becomes part of the shadow. This hidden sexual energy, often in the form of fantasies, repressed desires, or even shame around sexual expression, doesn't disappear or dissipate. Instead, it continues to influence our thoughts, behaviors, and emotional reactions in ways we are often unaware of. It works silently but powerfully, affecting our interactions, our relationships, and our self-perception. We may think we have overcome or suppressed these feelings, but in reality, they're still deeply embedded in our unconscious, influencing us at every turn. To understand the implications of this, it's essential to recognize that the shadow is not an abstract or distant concept. It is something we encounter every day in our behaviors, reactions, and emotional responses to others. The shadow reveals itself through projections, the act of attributing our repressed qualities or desires onto other people. This is often a defense mechanism, as it allows us to maintain a sense of self-worth by keeping our unconscious material hidden from conscious scrutiny. For example, when we judge others harshly for their sexual behavior or expression, we may be projecting our own repressed desires onto them. We see in others what we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. Sexual repression and the formation of the shadow can be seen in the way we react to people who express themselves sexually or emotionally in ways that trigger discomfort. Consider how someone might feel uneasy when a friend or partner expresses a desire for intimacy or affection, even when they themselves desire the same. These uncomfortable feelings, whether jealousy, anger, or frustration, are often the result of the shadow trying to bring hidden aspects of ourselves into the light. These reactions are not always about the other person. They are often about what we have suppressed or denied in ourselves. A more common example is the way many people experience shame or guilt surrounding their sexuality. In societies where sexual expression is often censored, stigmatized, or even criminalized, individuals may internalize these societal taboos and project them onto themselves. The result is a psychological fragmentation. A part of us wants to express our sexual desires and feelings, while another part of us condemns or denies them. This internal conflict leads to feelings of anxiety, self-doubt, and confusion. People may engage in unhealthy behaviors, such as compulsive sexual activity or an obsession with purity, to reconcile these competing desires. The sexual energy that remains suppressed within the unconscious becomes a source of emotional chaos. Jung observed that when sexual energy is repressed, it doesn't just lead to sexual frustration, it can distort our overall perception of the self. We may begin to feel disconnected from our bodies, unable to access the vitality and emotional depth that sexuality provides. Without a healthy connection to our sexual energy, we lose touch with our creativity, our emotional authenticity, and our ability to form deep, meaningful relationships. The shadow, as Jung pointed out, is not just a reflection of our desires, but also of the ways in which we have been taught to view those desires. It is the result of the split between the self we present to the world and the self that exists in the unconscious. The impact of the shadow can be seen in how we project our repressed feelings and judgments onto others. For example, someone who has been taught that their sexual desires are shameful or sinful may judge others who openly express their sexuality. These judgments often come from an unconscious projection of their own repressed desires onto others. The judgment of others' sexual behavior becomes a way to keep one's own desires at bay, to maintain a false sense of control. This projection is not just confined to sexual matters. It can also extend to any aspect of the shadow that we refuse to integrate into our self-image. We might find ourselves disapproving of someone's ambition, creativity, or even their emotional vulnerability, simply because these qualities reflect the parts of ourselves that we have neglected or suppressed. In relationships, the influence of the shadow is often most visible. People who have repressed their sexual energy or desires might find themselves drawn to partners who reflect this repression. They might feel attracted to someone who embodies the qualities they deny in themselves, such as a partner who is sexually liberated, emotionally expressive, or unafraid to pursue their own desires. This attraction can be intense and even confusing because it feels like an attempt to reclaim something lost or hidden within. However, once the initial attraction fades, the projection dissolves, and what remains is often a disillusionment or frustration. The individual realizes that the qualities they were drawn to in their partner were merely reflections of what they had been suppressing in themselves. This realization can lead to a breakdown in the relationship, as the person must confront the unconscious material they have been unwilling to face. The projection of a shadow can also manifest in the way we react to others who exhibit qualities we find disturbing or repellent. For instance, when we encounter someone whose behavior, appearance, or mannerisms trigger a strong emotional response, whether disgust, irritation, or admiration, there is a chance that we are reacting to a part of ourselves that we have hidden away. This is especially true when it comes to sexual expression. If we feel a sense of discomfort or judgment toward others' sexual behaviors or choices, it is often a sign that our own sexual energy is being repressed. Instead of exploring why these behaviors trigger us, we focus on rejecting or condemning them in others, hoping that by doing so, we can suppress our own repressed desires. Jung's insight into the shadow is essential for understanding the complex relationship between repression, sexuality, and behavior. When we fail to acknowledge the parts of ourselves that we consider shameful or unacceptable, these parts do not simply fade into oblivion. Instead, they grow stronger in the unconscious, influencing our behavior in subtle and often harmful ways. The shadow is not a distant or abstract part of the psyche. It is a living, dynamic force that shapes our thoughts, emotions, and actions in ways that we may not even be aware of. Recognizing the shadow requires a willingness to face the parts of ourselves that we have avoided, including our sexual desires and fantasies. By doing so, we begin the process of integration, bringing these unconscious elements into conscious awareness. This integration is not about indulging every impulse or acting on every desire, but about understanding and accepting all parts of ourselves. It is about recognizing the energy within us and learning how to channel it in healthy, constructive ways. For example, someone who has repressed their sexual desires might begin to explore these feelings through creative expression, art, or writing, allowing them to release pent-up energy without resorting to unhealthy behaviors. The process of integration also involves recognizing the ways in which we project our shadow onto others. By identifying the traits we find unacceptable in others, we can begin to explore why these traits trigger such strong reactions. Often, these reactions are the result of our own unresolved conflicts and desires. By acknowledging these projections, we begin to heal the rift between our conscious persona and our unconscious self, gradually moving toward a more integrated and authentic sense of self. The shadow, then, is not something to be feared or avoided. It is a part of ourselves that holds the key to understanding our deepest desires, our greatest potential, and our path to personal growth. By facing the shadow, we reclaim the parts of ourselves that we have neglected, and in doing so, we begin to live more authentically and fully. The repression of sexual energy, when left unchecked, becomes a destructive force in the unconscious. But by integrating it consciously, we can transform this energy into a powerful source of vitality, creativity, and emotional depth. Carl Jung's concept of individuation represents one of the most profound and important processes in the realm of personal development. Individuation, as Jung understood it, is the journey toward becoming a whole, integrated individual, one who is aware of and accepts all aspects of their personality, including those hidden or repressed parts. It is the process by which we integrate the unconscious elements of ourselves, including our shadow, into our conscious awareness. This integration leads to a more authentic existence, where one is not divided by inner conflict, but is instead aligned with their true self. The process of individuation is not linear or simple. It involves deep self-reflection and the courage to face aspects of the self that have been repressed or ignored, including the most intimate and sometimes uncomfortable parts, such as sexual desires, vulnerabilities, and emotions. Jung's theory suggests that without this process, people live fragmented lives, disconnected from their true selves. The integration of these unconscious elements is necessary for achieving psychological balance and emotional health. Without individuation, we remain in a state of internal conflict, never fully experiencing the depth of our potential or the richness of human experience. A crucial component of individuation is the integration of the shadow, the unconscious parts of the personality that are typically suppressed or rejected. These are the traits, desires, or impulses that we find uncomfortable or incompatible with our conscious self-image. In many cases, these shadow elements can be related to repressed sexual energy, desires, or feelings that have been deemed unacceptable by society, culture, or even by ourselves. Jung argued that these unconscious desires do not simply vanish when repressed. Instead, they continue to exert influence over our thoughts, actions, and relationships. This hidden energy often manifests in ways that we may not even recognize, such as through projections onto others or through unhealthy behaviors in relationships. Individuation requires the courage to face these hidden parts of ourselves, including our sexual energy and desires. These are not inherently negative or shameful. Rather, they are powerful forces that, when properly integrated, can contribute to a deeper sense of self-understanding, creativity, and personal growth. The repression of sexual energy can lead to psychological fragmentation, as it creates a split between the conscious self and the unconscious desires that continue to shape our behavior from behind the scenes. By integrating these desires into our conscious self, We bridge the gap between our inner and outer worlds and become more whole. The process of individuation also involves a deeper understanding of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine energies that exist within all individuals, regardless of gender. Jung proposed that each person contains both masculine and feminine energies that are often suppressed or underdeveloped, depending on the individual's experiences and societal conditioning. For example, a man who suppresses his emotional sensitivity or intuition might lack access to his anima, the feminine aspect of his psyche. Similarly, a woman who suppresses her assertiveness or independence might be disconnecting from her animus, the masculine aspect of her psyche. The integration of the anima and animus is essential for achieving psychological wholeness, as these energies govern how we experience love, intimacy, and connection with others. When we fail to develop or embrace these energies, we may experience dysfunction in our relationships, feeling disconnected or unfulfilled. However, when we learn to embrace and integrate these energies, we become more balanced and capable of experiencing deeper emotional and psychological intimacy with ourselves and others. Jung believed that the individuation process is not just about recognizing and integrating the shadow or the anima and animus, but also about accepting the full spectrum of human experience, including our sexuality. Sexuality, as a deeply personal and powerful energy, is often suppressed in many individuals due to cultural or moral values that stigmatize sexual expression. However, Jung's theory suggests that sexual energy, like all other psychic energy, is a force that can either be repressed and distorted or embraced and integrated. When repressed, this energy manifests in unhealthy ways, such as compulsions, neuroses, or emotional detachment. When embraced, it becomes a source of vitality, creativity, and deep emotional connection. For example, consider someone who feels repressed in their sexual expression due to societal taboos or personal guilt. This repression might lead to anxiety, frustration, or disconnection from their partner, as they struggle to reconcile their unconscious desires with their conscious beliefs. Over time, this inner conflict can lead to emotional numbness or withdrawal from relationships altogether. In contrast, someone who is able to embrace their sexual energy and integrate it into their identity experiences a more fulfilling and connected life. They are able to express their desires openly and honestly, leading to healthier relationships and a deeper sense of self-acceptance. Individuation also involves confronting the cultural and societal conditioning that shapes how we view ourselves and others. Jung believed that much of our psychological fragmentation stems from the pressure to conform to societal norms and expectations. These external pressures often force us to reject parts of ourselves that do not fit within these prescribed roles. For example, society often demands that men be stoic, rational, and emotionally restrained, while women are encouraged to be nurturing, passive, and empathetic. These rigid gender roles can suppress the expression of the anima and animus, leaving individuals feeling disconnected from their true selves. Through individuation, we learn to question these cultural norms and embrace the full range of human experiences and emotions. This involves shedding the external masks or personas that we adopt to fit in with society's expectations. The persona is the social mask we wear to present ourselves in a way that is acceptable to others, but it often hides the deeper, unconscious aspects of who we are. The process of individuation requires us to remove this mask and confront the inner truths that we have been avoiding. One of the most profound aspects of individuation is the concept of integration. This is the process of bringing together the fragmented parts of the self-repressed desires, unconscious impulses, and rejected qualities, and making them a conscious part of our identity. Integration is not about eliminating these parts of ourselves, but about accepting them and finding ways to express them in healthy, constructive ways. For example, someone who has suppressed their anger or frustration might, through the process of individuation, learn to express these emotions in a controlled and healthy manner, rather than repressing them until they explode in destructive ways. The integration of sexuality and creative energy is one of the most powerful aspects of individuation. Jung believed that sexual energy is not just about physical pleasure, but about the creative energy that fuels our entire being. This energy is at the heart of creativity, motivation, and emotional expression. By integrating this energy into our lives, we unlock the potential for profound transformation and personal growth. This integration allows us to live more fully and authentically, experiencing a deeper sense of connection with ourselves and others. Throughout the process of individuation, we must also confront the fear of the unknown, the fear of embracing parts of ourselves that we have repressed or neglected. This fear is natural, as the unconscious mind is often filled with elements that are difficult to face. However, Jung argued that the only way to truly heal and grow is to confront these fears and integrate them into our conscious awareness. The process of individuation is not about perfection, but about becoming whole. It is about embracing all aspects of the self, including those that may feel uncomfortable or unfamiliar. In many ways, individuation is a lifelong journey, one that requires ongoing self-reflection, openness, and courage. It is a process of continually shedding the layers of societal conditioning and personal repression in order to become more aligned with our true selves. As we progress along this path, we become more aware of our unconscious desires and motivations, and we learn to express them in ways that are authentic and healthy. This leads to greater self-acceptance, deeper emotional connections, and a more fulfilling life. The road to individuation is not easy, and it often involves confronting difficult emotions and unresolved issues. However, the rewards of this process are profound. When we integrate our unconscious desires, including our sexual energy, into our conscious self, we become more whole, more connected, and more alive. We no longer live in conflict with ourselves, but in harmony with our true nature. This integration allows us to live authentically, create meaning in our lives, and form deep, meaningful relationships with others. It is through the process of individuation that we truly become who we are meant to be. Sexual energy is one of the most powerful forces in human relationships, often shaping not only physical intimacy, but also the emotional depth, connection, and understanding that we share with others. Carl Jung's work on the unconscious and the shadow reveals that sexual energy is deeply intertwined with our internal psyche. When this energy is suppressed or repressed, it doesn't just disappear. Instead, it becomes a hidden force within us that influences our behavior in ways we may not fully recognize. This hidden sexual energy plays a significant role in shaping our relationships, particularly our romantic and sexual ones. When we fail to confront our desires and needs, especially sexual ones, we inadvertently invite the shadow into our relationships, causing us to create dynamics that often lack true connection and understanding. The core idea here is that the more we repress or deny our sexual energy, the more it remains buried in the unconscious, influencing our actions, decisions, and reactions in a subtle, often unacknowledged manner. This repressed energy doesn't simply fade away. It festers in shadow, where it manifests as unconscious patterns that affect our relationships with others. These patterns are not just about sexual desires. They also include the unexamined fears, fantasies, and insecurities that we are unwilling or unable to face. These elements from our unconscious psyche often project themselves onto others in the form of projection, a key concept in Jungian psychology. Projection occurs when we unconsciously attribute our hidden desires, fears, and qualities onto others. Essentially, we see in others the parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge. This psychological process happens without our awareness, and it is especially pronounced in romantic and sexual relationships. When we're not in touch with our own sexual energy and desires, we may project these repressed feelings onto our partners, seeing them as the source of our dissatisfaction or longing. For example, if someone feels sexually repressed, they may project that feeling onto their partner, interpreting any attempt at sexual intimacy as something that threatens their sense of self or control. They might even feel that their partner is too aggressive or too passive, reflecting the confusion and internal conflict they feel about their own sexual energy. In romantic relationships, this projection can lead to dysfunction and disillusionment. If both partners are projecting their repressed desires and fears onto each other, they're not engaging in genuine, authentic connection. Instead, they're creating a relationship based on distorted perceptions of one another. For instance, one partner might project their feelings of sexual inadequacy onto the other, leading to conflict and misunderstanding. If one partner is unable or unwilling to confront their repressed sexual desires or feelings, they might see their partner as the cause of their frustration, instead of recognizing that the true issue lies within themselves. The dynamic of projection can also lead to emotional distance, even in the most intimate of relationships. When sexual energy is repressed, it creates a barrier between partners, as neither person is able to connect fully with their own desires or with the other person. This creates a situation in which emotional intimacy is stunted and partners are unable to share themselves openly. The repression of sexual energy, then, becomes a silent force that distorts not only the individuals involved, but also the relationship as a whole. It leads to a breakdown in communication, trust, and emotional bonding, which are the foundation of any healthy relationship. Furthermore, this dynamic can cause a lack of true affection or connection between partners. Without acknowledging and integrating one's sexual energy, relationships tend to remain superficial, with both individuals unable to share their authentic desires or vulnerabilities. This results in a relationship based on external appearances or societal expectations rather than on genuine emotional intimacy. In many cases, people in these relationships may feel that something is missing but struggle to articulate what it is. They may be in a relationship that looks good on the surface, but lacks depth, passion, and emotional fulfillment. This emptiness often arises from the repression of sexual and emotional energy, preventing the relationship from blossoming into something truly fulfilling and meaningful. Jung's idea of the shadow is essential for understanding how this dynamic plays out in relationships. The shadow is made up of the parts of ourselves that we reject or deny, and it often contains the sexual desires, impulses, and fantasies that we deem inappropriate or shameful. When we fail to integrate these aspects of ourselves, they don't disappear. Instead, they take on a life of their own in the unconscious, silently shaping our perceptions and interactions. In relationships, the shadow is projected onto the partner, and this projection often creates conflict, confusion, and a lack of genuine connection. This process can be illustrated through a common scenario in romantic relationships. Imagine a couple where one partner has unresolved issues with their sexual identity or desires. This partner may feel uncomfortable with their own sexuality and, as a result, become overly critical or defensive when the subject of sex arises. They might project their own sexual insecurities onto their partner, accusing them of being too demanding or not sensitive enough, when, in reality, the issue lies within themselves. In this case, the partner who is projecting is not engaging with their own desires or feelings, but instead projecting those emotions onto the other person. This creates a cycle of misunderstanding and frustration, which can lead to further emotional distance between the partners. Jung believed that the process of individuation, the journey towards self-awareness and integration, requires us to confront and integrate the shadow, including the sexual energy that resides there. By acknowledging and accepting our repressed desires and sexual energy, we become more connected to ourselves and, in turn, to others. We are able to engage in relationships that are not based on projection or superficial dynamics, but on authentic connection and mutual understanding. By integrating sexual energy into our conscious self, we can form relationships that are deeper, more fulfilling, and emotionally connected. When we integrate our repressed sexual energy, we also start to become more honest and open in our relationships. We're no longer hiding parts of ourselves out of shame or fear. Instead, we are able to express our desires, needs, and emotions openly, creating a healthier and more authentic dynamic with our partner. This openness allows for deeper intimacy and a more genuine connection, where both individuals feel seen, understood, and accepted, instead of projecting repressed desires or fears onto one another. Both partners can face their vulnerabilities together, strengthening the emotional bond between them. One key aspect of Jung's theory is that this process of integration is not just about sexual energy, it is about the whole self. In relationships, when we project our repressed desires onto our partner, we are often failing to see them for who they truly are. We are seeing them through the lens of our own unresolved conflicts and unmet needs. By embracing individuation and integrating all parts of ourselves, our desires, vulnerabilities, and sexual energy, we can begin to see our partner as they truly are, without the distortions created by our projections. This leads to more meaningful, honest, and fulfilling relationships. For example, consider a relationship where both partners have suppressed their sexual energy. They might avoid discussing intimacy or feel uncomfortable when their desires are brought up. As a result, their relationship may become more transactional than emotional, with both individuals feeling disconnected and unfulfilled. However, if both partners begin to confront and embrace their sexual energy, the relationship can transform. They can start having open conversations about their desires, exploring intimacy with a sense of curiosity and mutual respect, and creating a deeper bond. This shift in the relationship dynamic stems from the integration of sexual energy into their conscious awareness, leading to a more connected, passionate, and emotionally intimate relationship. Projection in relationships is not limited to sexual energy. It also encompasses other aspects of the shadow, such as unacknowledged emotions, insecurities, and fears. By projecting these feelings onto our partners, we fail to engage in genuine communication and mutual understanding. Instead, we create a relationship that is based on distorted perceptions and hidden desires. Through individuation, we can begin to see our partners as they truly are, without the projections of our unconscious material clouding our judgment. The repression of sexual energy and the dynamics of projection in relationships are not unique to any one person or couple. They are universal patterns that can affect anyone who has unresolved issues with their own sexuality or emotional energy. The good news is that by facing these issues and engaging in the process of individuation, individuals can begin to heal and transform their relationships. This healing process involves confronting the shadow, integrating repressed desires and emotions, and creating more authentic, open, and emotionally connected relationships. In conclusion, sexual energy plays a crucial role in shaping our relationships, particularly romantic and sexual ones. When this energy is repressed, it becomes a hidden force that distorts our behavior, projections, and interactions with others. By embracing individuation and integrating repressed sexual energy, we can break free from these unconscious patterns and create healthier, more authentic relationships. The process of individuation allows us to confront our shadows, accept all parts of ourselves, and engage with others in a more genuine and emotionally connected way. This integration of sexual energy leads to deeper intimacy, greater emotional fulfillment, and more meaningful connections with our partners. The journey of liberating sexual energy and bringing the shadow into the light is an essential aspect of personal growth and self-realization. Sexual energy, often repressed or hidden deep within the unconscious, holds immense potential for healing, creativity, and transformation. However, in many cultures, this energy is either stigmatized, misunderstood, or outright suppressed. As a result, many individuals live their lives disconnected from this vital force, leading to a sense of emptiness, frustration, and a lack of authentic connection with others. To liberate sexual energy, one must first confront the shadow, the repressed aspects of the self that have been buried and denied, often due to societal taboos, personal guilt, or fear. These repressed elements are not inherently bad or immoral. Rather, they are simply parts of ourselves that we have rejected because they do not align with our conscious identity or societal expectations. Sexual energy, particularly, is often pushed into the shadow, where it festers and influences our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in ways we may not even realize. Confronting and integrating these repressed aspects of ourselves is a process of healing, self-discovery, and self-empowerment. When we begin the journey of liberating sexual energy, it is not about indulging in every impulse or desire. It is about acknowledging and accepting the full spectrum of our desires, including the ones that we have been taught to fear or shame. This process involves self-awareness and emotional honesty. It requires us to face the parts of ourselves that we have ignored or rejected and embrace them as integral aspects of our true selves. This is not a one-time event, but a continual process of self-reflection, growth, and integration. An example of this process can be seen in the experience of someone who has grown up in a conservative environment that views sexual expression as taboo or sinful. This individual might repress their sexual desires for years, feeling shame and guilt whenever these desires arise. However, as they mature and begin to explore their own feelings and experiences, they might come to realize that these desires are a natural part of their human experience. Rather than rejecting them, they learn to embrace and understand these feelings, gradually freeing themselves from the internal conflict and shame that have shaped their identity. This acceptance of sexual energy leads to a sense of personal liberation, where the individual feels more connected to themselves, their desires, and their creativity. The healing and integration of sexual energy is not limited to the individual, but extends to the way we relate to others and to society as a whole. When one person begins to liberate their sexual energy and embrace their authentic self, they not only heal themselves, but also have the potential to positively impact their relationships and communities. For example, a couple who both engage in this process of self-discovery and sexual energy liberation will experience a deeper connection. They will be more open and honest with each other, sharing their desires, fears, and vulnerabilities without shame. This leads to more fulfilling and intimate relationships, where both partners feel seen, heard, and accepted for who they truly are. Moreover, the liberation of sexual energy is not just about personal fulfillment, but also has social and cultural implications. In societies where sexual repression is common, individuals may feel disconnected from their own desires and from each other. This disconnection often leads to surface-level interactions and superficial relationships. However, when individuals embrace their sexual energy and integrate it into their lives, they become more authentic, more present, and more capable of forming deep, meaningful connections with others. This can create a ripple effect in society, where more people are able to express themselves honestly and openly, leading to greater understanding, acceptance, and compassion. The journey of liberating sexual energy also involves recognizing that sexual energy is not solely about physical intimacy. It is a creative force that drives us to explore, to innovate, and to connect. When we repress this energy, we also suppress our creativity and our capacity for self-expression. As we begin to embrace and integrate our sexual energy, we unlock new levels of creativity and vitality in all aspects of our lives. This can manifest in our work, our art, our relationships, and even our personal growth. We become more in tune with our desires and motivations, and this awareness allows us to make choices that align with our true selves. In addition to the personal and creative benefits, the liberation of sexual energy also has the potential to transform the way we experience intimacy. Sexuality, when fully integrated, becomes a means of deep connection, not just with ourselves, but with others. When we are in touch with our sexual energy, we are more present in our relationships, able to engage in intimacy with authenticity and vulnerability. This creates a foundation for deeper, more meaningful connections, where both partners feel truly seen and understood. In this way, sexual energy becomes a powerful tool for emotional and psychological intimacy. However, it is important to note that the liberation of sexual energy is not a process that can be forced or rushed. It is a journey that requires patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to explore the depths of our unconscious desires and fears. This journey may bring up uncomfortable emotions, memories, or experiences, but it is through this process of facing and integrating these aspects of ourselves that we can achieve true liberation. The path to freedom involves embracing our shadow, understanding our sexual energy, and using it as a source of empowerment and self-expression. An important aspect of this journey is the understanding that sexual energy is not something to be feared or controlled, but something to be embraced and expressed in healthy, constructive ways. In modern society, we are often taught to either suppress or indulge our sexual desires without fully understanding their deeper significance. The challenge, then, is not to deny or repress sexual energy, but to understand and channel it in ways that serve our growth and well-being. By embracing sexual energy as a vital force, we can begin to live more authentically, engage more deeply in our relationships, and tap into the creative power that lies within us all. The journey toward liberating sexual energy and bringing the shadow into the light is also about reclaiming our power. Sexual repression not only disconnects us from our desires, but also from our personal strength and creativity. When we liberate our sexual energy, we reclaim our vitality and our ability to create, to connect, and to live fully. This power is not about domination or control, but about self-awareness, acceptance, and integration. It is about becoming whole, embracing all parts of ourselves, and living with authenticity and integrity. As we continue on this journey, we must also recognize that sexual liberation is not an end goal, but an ongoing process. It requires continuous self-awareness, self-acceptance, and a willingness to confront the parts of ourselves that we have been taught to suppress or ignore. It is through this process of confronting our shadows and embracing our sexual energy that we begin to heal, grow, and transform. The liberation of sexual energy is a powerful tool for personal empowerment, creative expression, and emotional fulfillment. It is a process that allows us to connect more deeply with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us. In conclusion, the journey of liberating sexual energy is a profound process of self-discovery and healing. By confronting the shadow, integrating repressed desires and emotions, and embracing sexual energy as a vital force, we unlock the potential for personal growth, creativity, and deeper connection. This journey is not only transformative on an individual level, but also has the power to impact our relationships and society as a whole. By embracing our sexual energy and integrating it into our lives, we create the opportunity for a more authentic, fulfilling, and empowered existence. The idea of confronting and integrating sexual energy within the psyche is a cornerstone of Carl Jung's theory of personal growth and individuation. Throughout his work, Jung highlighted how the unconscious, including repressed desires and suppressed sexual energy, plays a significant role in shaping our behaviors, relationships, and emotional well-being. The way we process and integrate these aspects of ourselves, especially our sexual energy, has profound consequences not only for our personal lives, but also for our creative expression, relationships, and sense of identity. Sexual energy is not something isolated to the realm of physical intimacy. It is a dynamic force within our psyche that drives our creativity, emotional depth, and personal connection. When we fail to confront or integrate this energy, it doesn't disappear, it festers and affects us in ways that can remain largely unconscious. This is where the danger lies. Jung argued that repressed sexual energy manifests as unresolved emotional conflict, neuroses, and projections that distort our reality. It can even create fragmentation within the self, causing a split between who we present to the world and who we truly are in the unconscious. When we fail to reconcile the two, we risk living in a state of internal conflict, where we're often ruled by forces we cannot even consciously comprehend. One of the key takeaways from Jung's theory is that confronting and accepting the repressed aspects of ourselves, including our sexual energy, is essential for achieving true integration. Repressing these energies does not purify the psyche. Rather, it fractures it, leading to feelings of emptiness, dissatisfaction, and a lack of emotional fulfillment. Sexuality, when fully understood and integrated, becomes a source of vitality, creativity, and self-expression. It is a creative life force that is meant to fuel not just physical pleasure, but also our emotional experiences and our pursuit of personal goals. Jung's concept of individuation provides a framework for understanding this process of integration. Individuation is the process through which an individual becomes their true self, whole, integrated, and aware of the unconscious forces that shape them. This journey involves not just acknowledging the repressed aspects of the self, but also embracing them with compassion and understanding. It is about welcoming the parts of ourselves that we have long ignored or denied, and learning to incorporate them into our conscious identity. When we integrate our sexual energy, we are no longer slaves to unconscious impulses or repressed desires. Instead, we become more self-aware and in control of our lives. By accepting and owning our sexual energy, we unlock our true creative potential. We become empowered, not just in our sexual relationships, but also in our ability to express ourselves, form deeper connections with others, and pursue our personal goals. This process is not about indulging every impulse, but about understanding the deeper, symbolic nature of sexual energy and using it to fuel all areas of our lives. For instance, someone who has spent years suppressing their sexual desires or feeling ashamed of their sexual identity may find that this repression manifests in other areas of life. They might struggle with self-esteem issues, feel disconnected in their relationships, or experience a lack of passion in their creative pursuits. However, once they begin to confront these hidden aspects of themselves by accepting their sexual energy as a natural and powerful force, they may find that their entire perspective shifts. They may feel more alive, more connected to others, and more inspired in their creative endeavors. Their relationships may become more intimate, as they are now able to express their desires and emotions openly and without shame. In this way, the integration of sexual energy becomes a catalyst for positive change, not only for the individual, but also for those around them. Moreover, the process of integrating sexual energy and facing the shadow is not just an individual task. It has profound social implications as well. When we begin to heal and integrate our sexual energy, we also begin to reshape the way we interact with others. We move away from judgment and projection, and we approach others with greater empathy, understanding, and acceptance. This transformation allows for deeper emotional and sexual intimacy, not just in romantic relationships, but in all human connections. We become more open, more vulnerable, and more capable of building relationships based on mutual respect and authenticity. Jung's insight into the shadow and the repression of sexual energy highlights the importance of conscious living. By acknowledging the unconscious forces that shape our desires, behaviors, and relationships, we can free ourselves from the control these forces have over us. This process of self-awareness and integration allows us to step into our true power, one that is grounded in self-acceptance, creativity, and a deep understanding of our desires and motivations. We no longer feel controlled by forces outside of our awareness. Instead, we become the conscious creators of our own lives. The significance of integrating sexual energy also extends beyond individual growth. As people begin to embrace their sexual energy and integrate it into their lives, they can contribute to a broader cultural shift. In a world where sexual expression is often repressed or commodified, the act of reclaiming and integrating sexual energy can serve as a powerful form of rebellion against societal norms that seek to limit human potential. It can create a space for others to do the same, fostering a culture of authenticity, creativity, and mutual respect. Jung's work shows us that the path to psychological and emotional health requires us to face the parts of ourselves we have long hidden in the darkness. This journey is not always easy, as it involves confronting uncomfortable truths and accepting aspects of ourselves that we may have spent years trying to deny. However, it is only through this confrontation and acceptance that we can experience true personal freedom. When we embrace our sexual energy and allow it to flow freely within us, we unlock the power to transform our lives and the lives of those around us. The process of liberation and integration is not about rejecting sexual desires or trying to control them. It is about understanding them, accepting them, and using them to fuel our growth. Sexual energy is not a source of shame or guilt, but a vital force that has the potential to guide us toward greater creativity, intimacy, and self-expression. By embracing this energy, we can tap into a wellspring of power that enhances all areas of our lives, from our relationships to our professional endeavors to our emotional well-being. One of the most significant realizations that come from embracing sexual energy is the understanding that it is not just a personal issue, it is a collective one. When individuals liberate their sexual energy, they not only heal themselves, but also contribute to the healing of society as a whole. Repressed sexual energy is one of the root causes of many social and psychological issues, such as shame, guilt, and the objectification of others. By reclaiming our sexual energy and integrating it into our lives, we challenge these societal norms and create a space for healthier, more authentic connections. This shift has the potential to transform relationships on both an individual and collective level, leading to a more harmonious and compassionate world. Throughout this process, it's important to remember that sexual energy is a force of creation. It is not simply about physical pleasure or reproduction, but about the creation of new possibilities and new ways of being. Sexual energy is intrinsically linked to our creative power, our ability to express ourselves authentically, and our capacity to build deeper, more meaningful connections with others. When we liberate this energy, we tap into a vast source of creativity that can be used to enhance all aspects of our lives. It is through the integration of sexual energy that we become whole. And in this wholeness, we find the power to create, love, and live more fully. In conclusion, the journey of liberating sexual energy and bringing the shadow into the light is a deeply transformative process. By confronting the repressed aspects of our sexuality and integrating them into our conscious awareness, we unlock the potential for personal growth, creativity, and deeper connection with ourselves and others. This process is not only an individual journey, but also has profound implications for our relationships and society. When we embrace our sexual energy and allow it to flow freely, We create the opportunity for a more authentic, fulfilling, and empowered existence. Through this process, we become the creators of our own lives, using our sexual energy to fuel not just our desires, but our creativity, our relationships, and our capacity for love and growth. What a powerful journey we've just embarked on together. By confronting the shadow, liberating sexual energy, and embracing all parts of ourselves, we've learned that the road to self-realization and inner peace is paved with acceptance, integration, and a deeper understanding of who we truly are. Sexual energy is not something to be feared or suppressed. It is a vital force that fuels creativity, love, and personal growth. By liberating it, we reclaim our full potential and unlock a life of authenticity and connection. Now, I want you to take a moment and reflect. How can you begin to integrate this energy into your own life? How will embracing your sexual energy and confronting your shadow transform the way you live, love, and create? The journey doesn't end here, it's only the beginning. As you continue down this path, remember that true freedom comes from embracing the hidden parts of ourselves and using them to fuel positive transformation. If you found value in today's video, please take a moment to like and share with others who might benefit from this powerful message. Subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And don't forget to activate the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Your support means the world to us. And if you'd like to show your appreciation even more, please consider sending a super thanks. It helps us continue creating high-quality content that empowers you to grow, heal, and transform. Thank you for being a part of this amazing journey. Keep embracing your true self, stay connected to your energy, and remember, the path to self-realization is always unfolding. Until next time, keep shining your light and living authentically